Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Jumpstart. My name is Jason MAYR, and this morning we're going to be looking at three paintings, two portraits, and a landscape. First up, we'll have Rini. Second up, we'll look at Barbara. And last today, we'll have a look at Peggy's. So that will be the show today. How are all of you doing? Good morning from Cambria. Good morning, Claudia. Good to see ya. Claudia is one of our early risers. I'm becoming quite an early riser these days too. Good morning, Susan. Good morning, good morning. So I hope you guys all made it. For any of you guys that didn't see Masterworks last night and a fan of David LaFell, we went through quite a few images of his work that I took at a retrospective of his, lots of close-ups. So nice and juicy paint and stuff in there. So if you're into that kind of thing, you might want to check that out. Susan, we hope you're doing better. I had a little migraine the other day, so we hope you're back up and at it. All right, and Miss Cindy's got the kid off to school and God knows what else, and she's here taking care of us. Oh my God, what can she not do? What can she not do? All right, well, since I'm no small talk champion, why don't we see what the iPad's got and get back into a field to where I'm a little more comfortable. All right. So, Rini, you're doing fantastic here. I know one of the things Rini's struggling with is color and values, and getting the right color and managing the color. So I thought what I would do this morning in this time is talk a little bit about color. And I get a few messages from Rini, who seems kind of frustrated and flustered. But then I get her images, and she's doing great. So, but I know the feeling. I know the feeling. So one thing I want to look at right off the bat is the way that she's weakened that background. Can you guys see that warm, cool back there? It reads almost orange green, kind of a light green. Right? So first off, I want to give huge kudos for that, because look, you guys see that that's red right here? And then can you guys see that this is cooler right there? Right? And that's going through, that's kind of vibrating all through here. Well, the whole thing flat cool is too much. The whole thing this flat warm is too much. But by getting it in here vibrating one after the other, and the other thing is, look, the values are the same. Right? Since the values are the same and the chroma's close, in other words, it's a neutral red. It's a very neutral green. But even being, and I'm calling it red, it's probably more of an orange. This neutral warm, right, versus a neutral cool, the eye's always going to prefer the warm. Okay? So kudos, 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 kudos. The other thing is I got a message from you, and you had gray mixed up on your palette, and you just took a picture of that gray image. Let's see here. Let me see if I can do this, because part of what all of this is about is getting part of what this is about is building a way to communicate, to where you and I can communicate clearly. So I got a photo and you asked me if this gray was dark enough, but if I don't know what it's going to be next to, I have nowhere to judge it. Right? I see this, but I don't know what this is in my mind. So if you have a question like this, the right thing to do would have been to put this gray next to the background, put a little background color right there so I can see where the background is in relation to the gray. Put a little flesh tone in there so I can see what the flesh tone in light is. I can see what, so unless I can see what all of your piles are, there's no way for me to tell if one of your piles is right or not. Because again, there is no right or wrong in this by itself. The correctness of this color and value come in relation to everything else. Relation to the black, relation to the skin tone in shadow, relation to the skin tone in light, relation to the background, etc. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So it's very useful when you send me pictures and stuff, but you got to make sure that we have the right information on there for me to make a judgment. Also, when any of you guys are sending me questions and stuff, and I know that, you know, I talk to you and I tell you something, but a week later or something, you can't come back and, well, I did what you said, and because between the time that I've seen your painting and you've been working on this, I've literally been working on 30 to 50 paintings. So I just no way for me to remember exactly what I said or exactly what we were talking about. And I know you were a nurse, so think about if one of your patients from like 30 patients ago came back and just picked up the conversation mid-sentence. You know, you might be a lot better than me, but just have no idea what we're talking about. Okay, so the other part of that is if you get really clear on what you're asking, a lot of times you answer the question yourself, right? And that's what I found in painting, that when I started, you know, and I was over a decade in, I didn't go, yeah, I know. I thought, prove it, right? So it's like I tested myself on everything I thought I knew. And by doing that, you'll get better, getting a little clearer on the, question, okay? So that's just a little side note on that. But now that I see it like in relation to the background, in relation to the black, in relation to the skin and shadow, to the relation to the skin and light, then we can have a productive conversation about it, if that makes sense. Okay. So everything's working in here. And unless the photograph's really off on the value and the temperatures, what we're going to do now, and this is how we paint, is look, we got as close as we could here. We got as close as we could here. We've got as close as we could here, as close as we could here, as close as we could here, a close. So what are all of these? This is background. Right? And that is what? That's a orange or red neutral. We have a black. I would like the skin tone in light to be a little richer. Okay, and I'm going to talk about that, what richer means here in just a second. And then just reverse on the shirt, we're going to add just a touch more white on this on the light side. Right? I think over here, as this starts to turn, the color you have is really good. Right? So again, this is a good color to start with. Now what we can do, let me get a dump besides red here. Now what we can do, so if the red that you have stays right here just as it starts to turn over, then on this side what you can do is take something very similar to this red and just add a little more yellow ochre to it and a little more white. Okay, and I want to, this is going to take just a minute, but I want to show you guys something of how you can find your way around. So let's say this is our white, this is a highlight. Okay, then from that highlight, like if I put that white across that skin doesn't kind of jump. When I put it, you see how it jumps next to that? It jumps on that, it jumps on that. So if it doesn't jump off the skin, what it means is your skin has too much white in it. And what you're having trouble with right now is, it's basically the measure. It's the measure. And it can be tricky, especially to get a feel for the oil paint. Because as you try to control the value, you get too much red, too much yellow, too much white, too much black. And every time you're too much, the whole kind of gamut starts over. So I'm going to add a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow ochre to this color. Right, and let's see what that does. Okay, so now that color right there, you see how much darker it is than the white? And like I said, you see the background, it's about the same value as the background now. So what we're doing is there's just we're sliding a little bit. We're sliding. So if I call that then flesh tone and light, then the next thing we're going to need is background. Oops, and doesn't seem necessary to go that dark. All right, that even seems a little bit dark. Let's see. You see, so sometimes it takes a little while to find it, but see, that feels a little better to me. But the only way I get from here to here to here to here is to actually put it next to what I'm comparing it to. And then at some point I'll say, yeah, that's definitely different, but it doesn't feel diametrically opposed, if you will. Right? They're still breathing the same oxygen, those two colors. So let's see if we can take all this. So if the background is there, and so like when you have that gray pile, it should be in an order like this on your canvas, on your palette, so that while you see that gray pile, you can see your skin tone and you can see your white all right there next to it. And then from there, I like the shadow that you have. Mine's reading a little heavier than yours is right there, so let's redo that. Feels a little bit better. But yours has a warmer feel than mine does, and I like that warmth than you have in there. But again, we're just looking for relationships. And then you have your black. And mix up enough paint that you can test things. Right? If I take this black, is that going to separate from my shadow? Yeah. And if everything's in order, well, then it should definitely separate from everything else. Right? So that's how you test it. Literally just putting a little paint right there. And the other thing this will do is it'll train your eye. Is that lighter than my black? Yeah. Now in actual oil paint, if you do that over the entire pile, it'll be too much. You can see those are a little close, and that's why I said I liked yours had a little more color in it. Is that even more color than that? Yeah. And so that little bit more color, you see how that kind of jumps a little more? And so we have a better separation. Right, what I don't want at this point is when I do this to not be able for this to merge with that, for this to merge with any of those. I want them to be different. And that difference is a value difference. And they're in a very specific order. So I'm doing this because what I find is very few, if any, people will actually do this on their own. Right? These are things that you should just be doing on your canvas every time, your palette every time you mix paint. And then before long, that is in your mind while you're doing that. And at the end, all it takes is a little dot to check. Yep, that's right. But before it's in your mind's eye, you're actually going to have to physically put it there. And then I still, to this day, will put a little dot there to check if I'm in the neighborhood. But it always comes back to, how does it look on the canvas? Okay, well, what did we not get? We didn't get the shirt here. So what is this shirt? So you've got this here. Okay. And I said, if you add a little bit more yellow ochre and some white, a little bit, again, this is quantity thing. You see how this starts to look a little more lit up? That feels lit. But again, it gets close to the background there. But when we change our background, that should be really nice, right? Why? Well, one, they're going to be close to the same value. Same setup as you have here and here. What do we have? We have a warm and we have a cool. Warm color, cool neutral. And so instead of having two value notes, you're going to have one value note. But the red shirt is still going to win because of the color. And what that does is it releases the eye. The color carries the weight down there, but then the most impact can still be here. I hope I haven't gone off the rails too far. But again, it's without knowing why you're doing it, it's just so hard to really do this. So if we did those things, how would this look? How would this look if we just slid those things around like that? Let's start. Your black is like your black. Your shadow looks good to me. So let's start with the background. And again, this is going to be rough and quick, so don't go for the drawing or the exact value. But let's just take a look. And look at this. This is really just reading. This is amazing. Did that pick up right? Look how light that looks down there. It's actually just reading as cooler. But that, you see how that cool releases? So what happens is like, okay, we can go that light cool, but what if I don't want to go cool? I would rather go warm. So I know we talked about a warm background, so let's see if we can warm this up a little bit. But probably what we're going to have to do then is drop the value just a little bit. I don't know. See, that might work, but I think it feels like it's also going to get lost. Right, so that's a test. Now again, if I go flat over this, that's probably way too much. But what if I used both of these things? In other words, like around the face where I want it to disappear, we can have it blue, and then like up here, I could come back a little red, just like you had. If I want less impact on this side, look, as I turn this, that warm instead of cool, you see how that line gets less? All right, if I want less impact here, I can just put a little warm there. If we need. See how that lets you slide in and out of that shadow? Sometimes you want to slide and sometimes you want to step. Again, a color and a non-color is kind of required in everything. Yeah, even the background. Right? And then you see as you get these together, you get this wonderful gray that still has a feeling of some life to it. And then I can just kind of feel my, oh, too cool, too warm, too strong, too weak. Okay, so anyway, that's the first background. And then if we go to flesh, okay, and what if we let that be a little more colorful there? And then of course we've always got that highlight. Okay, so all I did here was I like everything you did. I just slid some values in color a little, and that's what I call the measure. Right? I didn't fundamentally change anything. I just slid some things a little darker, some things a little lighter, some things a little richer, some things a little grayer, right? And so it's a kind of a fine tuning, and this is what I would call the refining part. So oops, sorry that's so small, guys, sorry. Let's see. So look at the warmer background versus the cooler background. Again, just so you can get a sense of what it does. Okay? So then the question I ask myself isn't, is this color right? Is that color right? Is this color wrong? I ask myself, does the face have enough impact? Right? And one of the reasons I need to know where that face is when I do that gray is because part of the job of that gray is to make that face pop. And so if I make this gray darker, you see how that gives, it kind of holds that a little bit the same. And the other thing, right, so that applies everywhere. If I could make this a little darker right here, that by itself, the face would automatically get louder. So if this is an outside something, what I'm going to do is I'll probably come to a similar value that I have for that gray. And can we just turn that into some trees and shadow maybe? Like in the background. So maybe there's like trees back there. And the same, well, I want that shirt brighter. Okay, well, maybe this is all trees back here. This is too abrupt. I don't like that. Well, maybe some of those trees can extend. Maybe you don't like it coming out of his mouth. Maybe you want to do that. Maybe you feel like they're running off the top anymore, so you're going to introduce more trees and stuff back here. That again, hold our light in there. So ultimately, you've got to decide how much impact you want your thing to have, and then read the painting like a riverboat captain reads the river, because situations are always changing. So if you didn't want to do all that, but you still wanted him to pop, what else could you do? Well, what now if we... Notice how I'm making the flesh tone stronger without touching the flesh tone. So now, more than the shadow jumping out, now the light jumps out. So all of these are decisions that the artist has to make. But you're doing great, Rini, but I still feel like you're not quite judging the colors by what's next. And maybe I'm wrong there, and maybe we just haven't, like I know when I write, I don't feel like I say what I mean. But let's get clear on that, and then we can tell you exactly. But there's a difference between getting it set up and then refining the measure. And right now, you're just at refining the measure. Okay, kiddo? Because you're doing fantastic. You're doing fantastic. And again, guys, this warm cool that's happening in this background, I mean, that's just masterful right there. And I want you guys all to have the ability within that same value to go a little weaker, a little... But there's no way that's going to impact that black hat, because those changes in the background are so subtle, and that change between that and the black hat is so big that the eyes are adjusting for the black hat, so they can't read the subtlety. Okay, so that's fantastic. All right, anyway, I hope that helped out. I know that was kind of a long lesson, but I know that you've been struggling and working really hard, so I wanted to see if we couldn't hook up on that. So in my mind, Rini, what I'd love to see next time you send me photographs is... What's going on here? What's happening? Send me all those piles together. Right, and I know I've got a black here. Usually we only do 4. But let me see all of those piles, and then I can say, okay, look at your white, look at your flesh tone, look at boom, 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 and give you more specific things. And it's even better if there's a picture of this and a picture of the actual paints that you have on your palette, because then I can for sure go, okay, grab this and grab that and add it to that. Right? Rather than me and you guessing, wait, what is she saying? And you're going, what is he saying? Okay? All right. So, you guys watch here. Rini's going to come out of nowhere, because she's doing this stuff. She's struggling, but she's fighting to understand it, and I can see that in the brushworks and in the things she's done, and things are going to click. And when they click at some point, scary, scary, scary. Be good stuff. All right, I guess I could raise my head here. All right, Susan's feeling better. Good, 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 good. Loves the blend. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it's the handling of the paint too. That takes a little while to do it. And so you're doing good, Rini. You're doing really, really good. Miss Janny made it. All right. Miss Rini. Janny's back. So now let's go to, this is Barbara. And Barbara, too, we've got so many people in here that really don't have that much experience, that are doing some really incredible things. Um, but there's so much to painting, is sometimes it's hard to unpack it all. So I know she's experimenting and she's playing because she's told me so. And I can see that she's just finding these wonderful things, right? Because I can feel her playing, looking for that, and looking for that, and that, and that, and that. And look at this. What a nice, colorful shadow that is. Mmm, so tasty. And what a tasty, tasty, tasty background color that is. Right? Even isolated, you can see that's a beautiful harmony right there. Such a beautiful harmony. And the fact that she was able to get that in the eyes and the background, that further harmonizes everything. Right? So I'm getting a real feel for the separation of color. So this is going to come up in the next painting, but let's talk about it now. So when we're thinking about our big divisions, like I'm thinking about the face to the background, think in terms of hues. Right? So I want to think in this setup, when I'm thinking in terms of hue, that's when most people think of color. This is a red-orange face tone, right? It's neutral. It's not a high chroma orange, but it's a neutral orange against a grayer green background. Yellow, green, green, right? What happens is as you get better at painting, we're working with colors that are a little more elusive, right? And so there's no way to name the billions and billions of colors that can be mixed up, right? And there's no way to keep track of it. So what we want to do is just think in terms of more or less, right? And that's exactly what she's doing here. Right, playing with these colors, finding these colors, keeping them separate. And then look at how she took all the color and just grayed that out. Very good. As you went with your shadow, you're on the right track here, but we went too strong. We pulled it too strong warm. Okay, so we just need to head it back green a little. It can be a warm green, right? But I know, and I've done it a million, this is just a measure. This was a little too much of the warm and not enough of the cool. Okay. Wow, I'm having a hard time knowing even what to say about this because I want you just to keep going. There's little things I could critique, but you weren't working on those. And so in a lot of ways, it's not fair to that, right? The neck isn't quite the right size, but just forget about that stuff. I mean, look at the face. Look at the face. And I guess one thing I will say that I think will help you as you go forward, and it's easy to forget, and we all forget about it, but these are like open plateaus and plains and maybe softly rolling hills. Now we're getting into some topography. Right? And that's one of the main differences between like this area and then the eyes. And then this area. And then we've got the nose and we've got the... Can you see that? Can you think of it like as if we were looking... standing sideways looking across the face, and if they were laying down, right, you could have the plains and the rolling hills. But in those eye sockets, first thing you want to see is that this is a deep turn under. A deep turn under. Okay? And so there's a basically a hole in the skull here. And I'm not going to draw it exactly. I don't want you guys worrying about it exact. That'll come in when it's time for you to know exactly what that shape is. You'll be curious about it. You'll look it up and you'll understand it. I feel like to give you the information before you're ready for it just confuses the matter. So right now we can think of these as just big cups. And if the light is coming this way, so if the light's coming that way and we have a cup, generally what happens is now all this is turning under, isn't it? Turning under, turning under, turning under. And then not only is it turning under, but it's casting a shadow onto that side. And then as this is turning under, in the middle of that turning under thing, we have this large sphere poking out. But that sphere also turns this way and turns that way. Meaning this is going to turn under like into shadow, and this will turn around into shadow. This will turn under into shadow. That will turn, just like a ball turns into shadow. This is a ball. It's a ball inside of a cup, but it's still a ball. Right. And so you've got a big crevice, a meteor hole where a meteor struck the earth 2 million years ago. And then we've got this giant bubble popping out of that hole. And then on top of that bubble, we've wrapped it with some skin eyelids. Right? But the whole time, if we can think going that way, that three-dimensional, that will help. And so what that would look like then, and I'm just going to simplify here. And now different degrees, so the shadow may just, but at some point, because we're turning around too, this is going to drop off deep, and that's going to be in, and that's where this comes from, and we have a hard edge right there, and then underneath, it might not be there, but underneath that eyelid, and that's going to tump over, and that's going to turn around. That'll turn. So I hope that makes sense. And it's the same with the lips, right? We got to show them turning under, and then also the topography of it going that way. And I know you can only work on one thing at a time, but I just want to show you all of this is just more and more of the same thing you're doing. So as this turns the corner, and as it turns under, right, as this turns under, there's a cast shadow, and it turns the corner. You see, and then that'll start giving you a little more form. Okay? But don't go too fast. I mean, you're going at just the right pace. Every time I see your work, it's like skyrocketed. You're doing leaps and bounds. So just keep it up, Barbara. Keep it up. Fantastic. Fantastic. Yay. Yay, yay, yay. All right, Susan. Yeah, right. Look at the skin. Look at the skin. The warm and the cool. Yeah, it is happening. It is happening. So, Rini, good job. Claudia's cheering you on. Beautiful, Barbara. Faces. Yeah, her face, you know, it's funny. Sometimes you can have the spirit of things in there, even if things aren't exactly right. And You know, Barbara's definitely got the spirit in there. And so, fantastic. Good job. The value's getting better all the time. Yep, all of it. All right, Barbara, so glad. Man, she is a mom. She works. She's got a husband and a house. And she's painting. Oof. Good for you. Good for you. All right, now we're going to come to Miss Peggy. Miss Peggy. So, she was open to everything on here. And this, the reason I said last time about how I want you thinking about this, when I got a message about this, she thought warm desert and cool trees. Well, we want cool, light, warm shadow. And so that's why I want to make sure that when we start, we think, okay, so rather than cool trees, let's think of the trees as, and this isn't nonsense, this will come to really matter down the line. Right? So we can think of like the desert as oranges, reds, yellows, and those are warm. But let's say that save that warm and cool distinction for shadows and air. Right? So we'll have a orange, red, yellow out here against the trees that are going to be a green. And we can specify a yellow green, or we want more bluer greens, or what. I'm thinking blue greens are going to be too contrasty with the desert. You can do them, but it can get really, really tricky. So my inclination, we're going to have to keep our greens a little on the yellow side and warmer. And that way everything stays together and on the warm. And then rather than introduce any strong blue or any other color than warm, they'll be a little more neutral, right? There might be some blue and stuff in the sky, but you're not going to be able to make it a really high chroma blue, or I think it's going to jump out. Okay? So again, that's almost nomenclature talking about it, but even more than that, it's how you think about it, right? And this will help clarify your thinking as we get more and more advanced. Okay? So even if it doesn't make sense, spend a few minutes trying to figure it out. If it doesn't come, just let it go. But the few minutes trying to think about it, I don't get it. Next time, try to think it. I don't get it. That's okay. Next time, try to think it. Right? Some of the best advice I think I ever got, a college philosophy professor said, it's not a good idea to read things all the time that you completely understand. How are you going to grow? Right? He recommended reading things that were above your comprehension level. And that way, you'd have to stretch. You would have to grow your comprehension, right? You would have to get bigger in order to digest that book. And so this isn't a one read and quick way of thinking about things, but it's coming into an activity like painting and, let me take a first pass. Well, I understood about 3% of that. All right, let me read it again. Oh, I got about 15% that time. Right? And as time goes on and you grow and you learn, and maybe you come back a year or two later and you read it, whoa, about 40% of that made really, because I'm still lost in a lot of it. And then over time, you're living that book. And you go back and you read it 20 years later, like, wow, I forgot they even said, I thought that was something I understood. Well, the understanding grows. Okay, so even if these are things wait, I don't get that. The idea is for you to spend a few minutes engaged in thinking, what's my color separation? Okay? And it's really as simple, it starts as simple as that. It starts as simple as that. Now, since we're at the beginning, let's talk about the composition a little bit. And how do we want to view things, right? Sometimes it's how do we want to look. So let's look at what we see. Well, we've got that division, we've got before, and we've got after. So to me, although they're not exactly equal, those are all feeling pretty similar. Pretty similar. So that means we got to think about our concept. So are we talking about what's in front of this guy? Or are we going to be talking about everything this guy's gone through? Right? What's in front of him, what's behind him, and where is he in relation to it? It's not a good idea to put him right in the middle of it. Right down the middle doesn't make good art. It's aesthetically not a good choice. So I feel like he's journeying this way. So what if we slide him back a little bit? What's that going to do? All right, so we want to do this quick and easy. There's his head. He's turning. We've got a shoulder here. Boom. He's coming down. He's out for a walk. How do people walk? All right, and then this one's going to be planted. Right, his hands are behind in like a meditation or contemplation. I'm going to be a little too close. But now look at the difference between this space and that space. Okay, so I'm thinking probably over there somewhere for the figure. The other thing, do we want him down here? Right? Because again, this is like they open the door and stick their face right next to, right? We're running right into him right as we get onto the canvas. So what if maybe we were like this? And then again, the question is, what is this about? Is this about this particular man and his journey? Or is it about a man in a particular environment? This man is going to mean a larger figure, whatever that may be. A man in a particular environment is probably going to require a smaller man. So again, the right and wrong answer comes from your original concept and how you'll be thinking about it. And so if he's walking like that, then we want to show that come over the knee and fall out. Right, show his foot planted. Right, a little bit for his rump. Right, round and then fall off. And then if, like you said, there's any flow or anything. Okay, so and if we had that, and that just feels like a no to me. Right? You know, it's a good idea to stop them from running off the end of the canvas. If we did want that big thing there, I might want to like open a little pathway for the light. Open a little, and if it's hitting right, so maybe the light comes in a little diagonal too, one way or the other. And then this front tree, make it bigger, and make that shadow. Right? See how that shadow, if it intersects with him and then it divides, I think that could be of great effect. And maybe it goes all the way across the canvas, or maybe not. Maybe this goes like this. It opens up, then we go here. And then the next shadow, make it a little bit smaller. And not so far. Maybe it doesn't touch him. Right? And then maybe this next one stretches out and merges with his coat. Right, so that can help with depth a little bit like that. And I'm just going to get this light off the edge here. But, you know, what does that do, too? Now we're talking about walking through the shadows, right? Staying on the path of the light. Right? So there's so many metaphors in here. Right? If we wanted to go quite a bit deeper with that idea of walking through the shadows, what if those shadows I don't know if I would light up his hands behind him. Right? Now we are walking through the shadows, right? And again, it would have occasion to have him cut out. But if he's in shadow too, the back of him might merge with the ground, or it might stick out a little bit, depending, right? But do you see how in this plan, the light then sneaks through that shadow? Right? How would this look different? How would this whole thing change if the shadow literally enveloped him? Right? And as you think in these terms, right, you get a little bit more, you're like, ooh, right? Jason, I don't go around saying ooh, so you can just stop that right now. You're projecting. That is you and your little funny way of doing things. I do not act like that. Okay, you don't have to act like that, but I'm going to. Ooh. Ooh. Do you know what I mean? So I think you're onto something here, but let's be a little clear with our concept, like with what this is about, and work with that. And then if this dark, again, if that went over to like green now. Ooh, that was a little much. All right, so we've got all of that. Then what can happen when we do come out here? Right, just by the grayness of that. And then again, it's the movement. It's not that particular color, but it's where we go from there. Lighter, grayer, because we can go light. Yeah, we can go lighter, grayer on everything unless it's completely neutral. those trees would be darker. A little richer. Right, so if this is those same trees, look at the difference. And that's what's going to say way back there. I know I'm a little bit heavy. And then what if the sky Right, then sky holes can create the trees. Get that horizon in the sky, a closer value. Getting sky holes in the trees. You know, something like that. And I think if we move the guy back, then yeah, we'd be really onto something. So the first thing I would do is let's find these big divisions. And then once we define the big divisions, let's talk about how to add the third dimension. So the big thing that I'm working with right now is all has to do with visibility, the first principle. Okay, so let's get the visibility set up where, boom, and what's visible? A light against a dark. A light on a light's not visible, right? Grays on grays not visible. Color on color on color not visible. It's not that it's invisible, but it doesn't have the impact that a light on a dark has. So our first pattern we have to establish is our light-dark pattern. Once we have a good light-dark pattern, then we can go through that pattern and see, okay, what is this pattern encompassing, and are there things in there that I would like, or areas that I'd like to focus? And one way we can get focus and a richer story is to make sure certain areas of the whole thing has a three-dimensional feel. Not just a two-dimensional division, which gives visuality, but now let's make it feel three-dimension. Okay, then the third step is we want to make sure there's eye movement through the painting. Like there's a definite overall way we want the viewer to travel through the painting. And it's very obvious and comfortable for them to do that. Okay, so look at that, 858, boom. Okay. Yeah, Peggy's got some great idea. Over the years, she's got some great ideas, but it's sometimes the ideas they can take years to develop. I mean, I've got paintings that I've literally been working on these ideas for 7, 8, 10, 15 years. And you just kind of revisit and recreate. It's amazing how long it takes, but so you want to learn what you're doing when you're in class. When you come to class with me, you've got to paint at least a little bit of what I'm trying to teach to learn how to do what we're doing, right? After you know that, after you can give me solid 4 values every time, after every time I look at your canvas, I see a black, I see a gray, I see a color, and I see a white. Are you guys painting today? Are you guys painting? Check, do you have the 4 values on your canvas right now? Are those 4 values in their lane? Shadow, stability, right? Gray, color number 2, white number 1, right? And so again, if you'll just back up and ask yourself that, but you have to give it room. And sometimes people don't like to give the room because they don't always get the answer. It doesn't matter. The answer might not come immediately, but unless you give it a little space, a little thought, a little intention, a little I wonder, and let that float within you for a little while. This is how these things bubble up, right? So there's seeds that we're going to plant, and you know, one day we're going to come back and harvest. And probably not pull up the whole plant, just pick off something to spice up dinner. And it can keep feeding us and keep feeding us and keep feeding us and keep feeding us. All right, so let's nourish everybody. All right, everybody, thank you so much for your attention this morning. Look at that, just about right on time. Woohoo! I'm excited about that. Excuse me. So I off to a beautiful dentist appointment, and so we'll have sketch club tonight, and hopefully my mouth won't be too sore and I won't be drooling on myself. So you'll have to tune in to see if that goes well or not. Could be more interesting for you guys than it is me. We'll see. Anyway, until then, I hope this helped out. I hope this inspired you. Go do something beautiful. You can't have time for that. Just be beautiful. Be beautiful first. Do something beautiful second. And we got it covered. What else do you need? All right, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.